Hey everybody, how's it going? And welcome to another MAMG Let's Play of 999. When we left off, we finished the safe ending, which is absolutely crazy. And now I'm getting my head start onto the true ending of the game. Now, I did already bypass a couple of the true ending requirements because we've already seen them. So, in order to get the true ending, before you get to the operating room here, you need to go through the cabin, which is door 4, when you first get to choose where you want to go. Now, in the cabin, if you remember, Santa gave us a Clover bookmark. You got to make sure you take that bookmark, and then when you're locked into the freezer in the kitchen, you got to make sure that you hear June's story about the ice that doesn't melt, or whatever it was. I forgot what the exact prompt was, but you guys remember that story. So you want to make sure you do that. Now that I'm here, I should be able to listen to Seven tell a story, I believe. And that's one of the requirements of that. But I don't know if it's here or... Let me see. This is all the same. I don't know if it's exactly this one or not. I don't know. I'm kind of fast forwarding through it. Okay, here we go. Now I can't go any further. Like molecules were communicating with one another, transmitting information in a way humans couldn't perceive. This phenomenon spread throughout the world, right? Junpei looked up at Seven with half a smirk. Seven stared at him, dumbfounded.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. But how did you know?
I heard another story kinda like that one.
When?
In the freezer.
What? The freezer?
Junpei told Seven the story where he'd heard from June in the freezer in the kitchen. How one day, glycerin began to crystallize, and the story of the ice that wouldn't melt at room temperature. When Junpei was done, Seven looked thoughtful and absent-mindedly rubbed the scar on his chin.
Ice that doesn't melt at room temperature, huh?
That sounds familiar?
Yeah, hold up. I feel like I can remember something. It's right there.
Seven squinted. His eyes stared off into space, as if he were trying desperately to focus on something far away. Do you... okay, so I'm supposed to say, do you know about Ice 9? Yeah. Know about Ice 9?
Ice 9. Ice 9. Ice 9. Ice. Ice. Ice.
Suddenly, Seven's eyes shot open.
That's it! I remember now! That woman! She's on this boat!
That woman?
Alice!
Who's Alice?
Come on, the woman who wouldn't melt at room temperature!
It became clear to Seven that Junpei had no idea what he was talking about. He ran his hand across his face and took a deep breath.
You know how the Titanic sank on April 15th, 1912, right?
Yeah? More than 1,500 people died. Worst maritime accident in history. What about it?
Did you hear about the boat that was sent to collect the dead bodies?
I think that was the RMS Carpathia, right? It was a cruise liner, just like the Titanic.
No. That was the ship that picked up the survivors. The ship that collected the dead bodies was the CS Mackay Bennett. The Mackay Bennett showed up on April 17th, 2 days after the accident. It set out from Halifax, a port in Canada, and recovered 306 bodies. The Atlantic, that far north, was really cold. It would have to be, for there to be icebergs and stuff. Anyway, the bodies they pulled out of the water were frozen solid.
This isn't a very nice story. So, what happened next?
Well, they say that the Mackay Bennett recovered something more than just dead bodies. There were various bits of stuff floating around in the water. Things the drowned had carried with them, or stuff dislodged as the ship sank. One of the things they found was a coffin.
A coffin?
Yeah, a wooden one. The craftsman who made it must have been pretty skilled. It wasn't just a wooden coffin, it was all wood. There were no nails or reinforcements, and there were no gaps in the wood anywhere. It was airtight. The crew got pretty curious about what might be inside it and opened it up. They had to get a wedge and a hammer it open. It was so well made. Inside, they found a woman. Or I guess you could say they found the dead body of a woman. Her hair was thick and black, and her skin was deep brown and didn't show any signs of age or decomposition. They say that she looked gorgeous, like a goddess. She was obviously dead, but everyone who looked at her said she just looked like she was sleeping. Her skin was so lifelike, she looked like she might wake up at any minute. She didn't though. Like the rest of the bodies they found, she was frozen solid. Eventually, the McKay Bennett finished the search and returned to Halifax. The 306 bodies were unloaded and taken ashore. However, it was warm enough that they began to melt. They say the stink was horrible. But there was one body that didn't thaw. The girl in the coffin. That's right. Everybody thought for sure that she'd melt and start to rot like the rest of them eventually. But weeks passed and nothing happened. Then a month passed, and another. And it was summer, and she was still frozen solid. After a while, people started to say she was some sort of miracle. Rumors about the girl started to spread, and people came to visit Halifax from all over. After a while, people started to call her All Ice. Alice. Of course, those rumors didn't last long. Why? Well, she up and disappeared. One day, Alice was there, and the next, she wasn't. They say someone snuck in to where they were keeping her and stole the body. With the body gone, the rumors followed pretty quickly. And after a while, no one remembered her. You might be able to find something about it, or her if you find a newspaper from back then, but that's about it.
Wait, you just said that she was on this boat.
Yeah, I did. Alice has got to be somewhere on this ship.
No, why the hell would you say something like that?
'Cause I know.
And just what is it you know?
What happened to Alice after she was stolen?
Junpei gulped. Alright, tell me, what happened to Alice? Seven nodded, slowly, and took the look of a man recalling something long buried.
Well, around that time, the word was there was a thriving black market in New York. I mean, I'm sure there still is, but this was special. All millionaires from all over the world. I've heard that Alice went up for auction there. The person who won the auction was Lord Dashiell Gourdain. You've heard that name before, right?
Sir Gourdain. Isn't he the guy who bought the Gigantic? The Titanic's sister ship?
Yeah, that's him. Although, I guess he hadn't done that yet.
Well, what do you mean?
Gourdain bought Alice in 1912. Then, 4 years later in 1916, he bought the Gigantic. And he hid Alice somewhere on the Gigantic. But nobody knows where. He died in 1931. And apparently, he died without ever telling anyone where Alice was hidden. However,
what?
Well, he did have one close friend who asked him, "Where is Alice?" And he said, "Alice sleeps in a small chamber past the Forest of Knowledge, beneath the navel of the Gigantic."
What the hell is that? Some kind of riddle?
Your guess is as good as mine.
Seven threw his hands up in defeat.
So that's it. Whatever you think, I believe it. She's hidden somewhere on the Gigantic. In other words, she's hidden somewhere on this ship.
Before Junpei could dispute Seven's rather bizarre claim, they heard Clover's voice from the door. She didn't sound pleased. Hey, what are you two doing over there? Stop wasting time and get over here.
Okay, we're coming.
Ugh. Seven looked at Junpei.
Yeah, so anyway, that's the story. It might be useful someday. Don't forget it.
With that cryptic remark, he turned and left the room. Junpei was left behind to ponder what he'd just heard. He tried to remember what June had told him earlier. That mummy wasn't just a normal mummy. They say she was frozen. The story says that from the time of its discovery, all the way through when it got put onto the Titanic, and even though it was carried through the desert, her body never melted. What was that Egyptian priestess Alice? Had the water in her body become Ice 9? No, that's nuts. There's no way somebody like that could exist. Junpei shook his head, trying desperately to clear it, and followed Seven to the operating room where Clover was waiting. Alrighty then, so there's that story for you guys to ponder, and in just a few short minutes you guys will have another fun little story that Clover's gonna tell us after I get the remaining parts and unlock the exit to the operating room. So just hang tight and we'll be right there. Alright guys, so now we have finally unlocked the operating room door and we came back for Clover, and here she is looking at the mannequins. Now remember, we had to change the mannequins by switching their body parts. The only thing that was the same was their head and their heart. Their arms, their legs, well, one of their arms stayed the same, but their other arm, their legs, their chest, and their torso all changed. So here we go. Okay, so we need to talk to... Oh, hang on. Do I need to give her the 4-leaf clover? Yes, I need to give her the 4-leaf clover. Okay. So give her this. Oh, yeah. He didn't know why, but suddenly Junpei remembered something he'd been given earlier. He reached into his pocket and dug it out. A 4-leaf clover. Santa had given it to him in the second class room. He held it out to Clover. Do you know that each leaf on the 4-leaf clover means something? Hope, faith, love, and luck. Take it. Use it as a good luck charm. He pressed the 4-leaf clover into her hand. Listen to me, Clover. No matter what happens, you can never lose hope. You have to remember what's most important, and that's to have faith and to have love. If you can remember all of those, that'll bring you good luck. Snake, I mean, your brother, he's not dead. He's alive somewhere. I'm sure of it. You just gotta believe in that. Clover stared at the 4-leaf clover in her hand. He could see tears start to form at the corners of her eyes. Thank you. Her voice was tiny and broken, and as she spoke, she started to cry. She tried to hide her tears by looking at the floor, but it did little good. She wiped away tears with the baggy arms of her jacket, but more quickly took their place. Okay. No matter how she tried, she couldn't stop crying. Her tears made small wet circles on the floor. Thank you. She said it again. Then she looked up at Junpei and seemed to choke down the last of her grief. She did her best to smile. Junpei wiped an errant tear from her cheek with his thumb, and he gave her the best smile he could manage. Now, come on. Seven's waiting for us at the exit. But still, she didn't move. Wait. Before we go, there's one thing I want to ask you. What's that? What do you think when you hear the word experiment? For a moment, his mind froze. Then he came back to his senses and realized the word meant nothing to him, aside from the dictionary definition. What? Oh, huh. I guess it was just a coincidence then. I mean, that you knew about the 4-leaf clover. Look, I'm sorry. I don't want to be a jerk, but you're making less than no sense right now. Oh, no, it's nothing. Just forget it. Oh, don't give me that. You really think I could just drop this? What is this experiment you were talking about? Clover looked away. The 4-leaf clover was still in her hand. She stared at it for a long moment, and then finally spoke. You promise you won't tell anyone? Cross my heart. Really? Really. I can trust you, right? Of course you can. Clover slipped the 4-leaf clover into her pocket. Her eyes still red from crying, she looked up at Junpei. Okay then, I'll tell you. I'll tell you what happened on this ship 9 years ago. Wait. On this ship? Yes, this ship. He was entirely lost. He had 1,000 questions, but it was probably best, he thought, to save them until Clover had finished. It was an experiment to test some sort of psychic thing. Something about communicating through these fields that you can't see. Fields that you can't see? He heard something like that before. Clover nodded. Like, think about this. She pointed at the operating table. On top of it was some mismatched medical mannequin whose parts had been swapped with another mannequin. This is John, right? But is he really John? All Junpei could think was, she has finally lost it. Isn't this like Locke's socks? Or the ship of Thesis? Junpei grew even more confused. He'd never heard of either of those things, although they sounded smart. You don't know. You haven't heard of those paradoxes. Junpei shook his head. Clover laughed. Okay, well, pay attention then. This is how Locke's socks works. Let's say I've got a pair of socks. They're my favorite socks. One of them gets a hole in it. What would you do if that was your sock, Junpei? If it was your favorite sock, probably patch it up. Well, I guess I'd patch it up. Get some cloth and close up the hole. But what if another hole opens? I'd add another patch, I suppose. What if another hole opened after that? Another patch, I guess? Well, let's say you just keep adding new patches, until eventually, the original cloth of the sock is totally gone. Once you get to that point, can you really say they're the same socks that you started with? That's tough. Junpei crossed his arms. So, that's the Lock's socks thing? Yeah. The ship of Theseus is a lot like that. The ship of Theseus. If you keep fixing damaged parts on the ship, it eventually ends up with none of the parts it started with. Can you really say that is the ship of Theseus that you started with? And what if you took all the old parts from the first ship and built another one somewhere else? Then which ship is the real ship of Theseus? The one you repaired, or the one that you built with all the original parts? It was an interesting question. Clover could see Junpei was intrigued. Hey, do you think it's the same? What's the same? These guys. Is it John, or is it Lucy now? Junpei looked at the operating table again. A mannequin full of body parts from a different body. Clover had been right. It was just like Lock's socks in the ship of Theseus. The part of the body that holds a person's identity is the head. Of course, for many hundreds of years, the conventional wisdom had held that a man's identity resided in his heart, or any other number of organs. John's head and heart were both his, but apart from that and a single arm, the rest of his body had once been Lucy's. Was that mannequin really John? We're just like these mannequins. She looked at Junpei again. Think about it. The cells in our body change every day. Old ones die and new ones are born. Maybe part of my arm is made of stuff from a fish I ate once. Or maybe part of your right side is made from a cow you ate. If you take it a little further, those cows and fishes are made from something else too, right? That's how we're all connected. Through fields that can't be seen with the naked eye. The silence was broken by Seven.
Hey! What the hell is taking you two so long?
Seven's head appeared in the doorway. He was not happy.
How long are you gonna make me wait? We don't have time to screw around.
Junpei and Clover looked at each other. Clover looked at Junpei as if to say there was more she wanted to tell him. She shook her head. Whatever she had to tell him, she didn't want to tell him in front of Seven. Seven seemed to catch on.
Oh, what were you two doing? Was this some sort of secret meeting?
No, it wasn't. We were just playing with the mannequins.
Huh?
Let's go, Junpei. Moving a little bit too fast to be entirely innocent, Clover headed toward the exit. Seven stared after her, then turned to Junpei with an amused expression.
Playing with mannequins, huh? Didn't know you were into that kind of thing, Junpei.
You're a dick. Junpei dashed past him and traced Clover's path out the door. With a short laugh, Seven followed. They stood looking at the door. Junpei took out the Jupiter key. Okay, and now we are good. So, I'm going to go ahead and continue forward because I don't think this episode has quite enough content to get us to where we need to be. But for those of you that need to know where to go next, if you're trying to do a true playthrough on your own, after the operating room, we're going to go to the captain's quarters. So I'm going to skip that as well since we've already done it. But that's what I'm going to do. So we're going to do door 1 is the chart room in the captain's quarters. So I'll see you guys after that has been completed. Okay, not sure why it stopped me here, but it stopped me, so get ready for some new content. It was a lie. All Junpei wanted was to get rid of Ace. He'd sent Ace to the wheelhouse at the beginning for a reason. Oh, because we were trying to talk to Clover. There was something he meant to ask Clover, and he meant to ask her in private. There was something he wanted to ask Clover, and he didn't want anyone else to hear him ask it. He also knew that Clover would likely remain silent if there were anyone else around when he asked. That was why he was so desperate to send Ace back to the wheelhouse. Oh. Well, that's not that different. Junpei let out a sigh and brushed a few drops of sweat from his forehead. He turned and found himself looking straight into Clover's eyes. She heard what Ace had said. She regarded Junpei with caution. What was that about? She was clearly suspicious, and with good reason. Junpei's eyes widened, and he held up his hands in a gesture of innocence. Oh, no. It's not like that. What's it like, then? I just wanted to hear the rest of that story. I didn't get a chance to ask you about it until now. What story? About the experiment. Remember the one you started to tell me in the operating room? You said something about an experiment that happened here 9 years ago. Clover bit her lip. She stared down at the floor for several long moments, and when she spoke, it was barely audible. I'm sorry, but I don't want to talk about that right now. I'm just not in the mood, okay? You understand, right? I just keep thinking about my brother. I can't stop. I mean, who would do something like that? To my brother. I can't forgive them. I'm not gonna let them get away with it. They're gonna pay for it, I promise. So... Her shoulders were shaking. Drops of blood have sprung on her lips from where she was biting them. She wiped it off and looked up at Junpei, her eyes fierce and angry. Junpei? Who do you think did it? Her voice was cold and scarcely above a whisper. Junpei gulped. Well, if what Seven said was right, then there would have been at least 2 of them. You need at least 3 people to open the numbered doors, and if you subtract Snake, then that means there were at least 2 other people. You're right. So, what does it mean? Well, if we just look at the bracelet numbers, we should be able to figure it out. Who could have opened door 3 with Snake? Well, really, who and who, or who and who? You mean it could have been 4 people? Well, technically it's possible. I don't know. That doesn't seem very likely. Why? I'll tell you later. Why don't we just assume it was only 2 other people for now? Okay, got it. Let's do that then. Then, who do you think it could be? Junpei crossed his arms in thought. Snake's bracelet number was 2. With 2 bracelet numbers added to 2 would give the digital root of 3. Which 2 bracelets added? Oh god. Oh my god! I don't know! Well, I mean, it's not... It's Ace. Cause it's not... Oh god, okay, give me a second, let me think. Ace and Santa would be what? 3, 3 and 2, so no. Ace and June, which June is 6, but would she really join forces with them? Okay, 8. 10, that wouldn't work. Lotus? Is it Lotus? Would it be Ace and Lotus? Oh, the digital root won't be 3. Whoops! Then what 2 other people could it be? Well, crap. That wouldn't work either, would it? Nope, I'm going down. I'm going the wrong way. I am gonna disappoint everyone right now. Okay. Hang on. So, it had to be Ace though, right? It's not Ace and June. But I don't think it was Ace and Santa either. But the numbers don't match. But it had to be Ace. I thought Ace, like, said he did it. That's weird. That's really weird. Okay, so who else could it have been then? Okay, so we need to add digital root of 3, so we need 12. Santa and 7 could do it. Is it Santa and 7? That would add up. Could it be? Or Santa and 7 the killers? I don't think it is so. Well, of course, they don't know about the 9th man's bracelet and stuff, too. What's wrong? Clover looked at Junpei, and he looked back at her. There was no point in hiding it. He told her his conclusions. That's what I thought. She looked less surprised than he'd expected. Santa and 7. If it was 2 people, then that's the only combination that works. Hey, wait a minute there. Don't you think it's a little too early to be jumping to conclusions? Well, all I said was those 2 could have opened the door 3 with your brother. There might be other possibilities. Well, what are the possibilities? He didn't have an answer. He was ready to admit defeat when Clover spoke. Are you saying you think that it was 3 or 4 people? I really don't think that's likely. Why? can I borrow your pen and paper? Clover put her hand out expectantly. Junpei pulled out his pen and a pad of paper and handed them to her. She opened the notebook and wrote down several simple addition problems. Eventually, she had 8, which provided the digital root of 3. Okay. God, there's so many people involved. What's this? These are the combinations for 3 or 4 people. These 8 combinations are the only possible ones. I see. Junpei. Yeah. I can trust you, right? Of course. Why would you need to ask that? Really? Yeah. So then, I should get rid of B, D, G, and H, right? Of course. Just cross them out. And you should take off yours too, the ones with 4. So, what does that leave? A and E. And one has June in it. Wait, it can't be A. Why not? Because June's in that one. There's no way in hell she'd do something like that. Are you sure? I'd bet my life on it. Okay then. Then I can cross off A too, right? Yeah. Well, what have we got left? E, which is Ace, Santa, 7, and Lotus. Do you know what this means? Everyone besides me, you, and June would be working together. Do you think that's likely? If there were 4 people working together, they wouldn't be very cautious. I don't think they'd try that hard to hide what they were doing if they outnumbered us, right? Well, you do have a point. And besides, if Ace and 7 are working together, they could have easily gotten rid of me when I went to the shower room with them. But they didn't. They didn't even try anything. If they were killers, why wouldn't they? Her voice was calm, but Junpei had only to look into her eyes to know that it was a forced calm. There were tears forming at the corners of her eyes, and she was blinking furiously to keep them back. Perhaps by attempting an objective analysis of who might have killed her brother, she had been able to distance herself from the harsh reality of his death. The more she struggled to act unconcerned, the more Junpei felt his heart tighten. Okay, yeah, well, that does make sense. It does seem pretty unlikely that it was as many as 3 or 4 people. Yeah, then that means there's a good chance it was Santa and 7. That's how it looks. But why would they do it? There was a moment of silence. I think I know. What is it? He laid his hand gently on her shoulder. He was close. So close to the answer. And Ace came in. When Ace chose the worst possible moment to return. Of course. He raised an annoying eyebrow and then spoke. Have I interrupted something? What do you want? There was something I wanted to speak with you about, Junpei. Could you come with me? For a moment. He turned on his heel and walked back toward the wheelhouse. Junpei looked over at Clover. He gave her a short nod and hoped that she would be willing to talk with him again later, and followed Ace. Of course. What did you want to talk about? Ace looked at Junpei and smiled. Perhaps more of a smirk than a smile. There was something I wanted to check. Yeah? What's that? If you'll excuse me. Oh, he's checking my numbers. Yep. He reached for Ace's arm. But it was already too late. Yep. He got the paper. Okay, so that's not any different. I don't know why I can't skip it. But whatever. Okay, so I need to figure out what else I need to do in order to get out of here and find out what's really going on this ship. Because we really, really need to find that out soon. Alright, it's time to investigate the captain's corpse, apparently. And right now we're debating whether or not he can be Zero, and again, it stopped my fast travel option, so there's got to be something else here. Well, even if he wasn't one of us, there's no way that man could be Zero. Don't you get it? The letters that spell Zero on the TV screen. The captain's clothes he's got on. And of course, the bracelet with the 0 on it. It's too obvious. Look, this is Zero right here. This dead body is Zero. Doesn't that seem kind of funny to you? You're right. Only an idiot would see through something like that. No, that's not the point. I'm not trying to make fun of them for thinking a trick like this would work. I'm sure they didn't think it would work, which makes me wonder, why did they do it? I think this is a challenge. A challenge from the person who's really behind all of this. He's making fun of us. Don't you get it? If whoever killed this guy really wanted us to think this corpse was Zero, they'd never put a bracelet on him. Walking around with a Zero bracelet would be like hanging a sign around your neck that said, "I did it." Anyone with a brain would be able to see that this guy is supposed to look like everything Zero is supposed to be. Just like we did. The killer must have known we wouldn't think he was Zero, and put the bracelet on him anyway. Do you know why? Why? Like I said, he's mocking us. Too bad, suckers. This isn't Zero. It's the same bad joke a lot of criminals like to play. They'll just sit back and watch people run in circles. Look, here I am. What's wrong, guys? Come on, catch me if you can. That's really twisted. But it almost seems kinda childish. Yeah, you're right. It's really childish. It's like a game to whoever this person is. That's what seems funny to me. Junpei bent down next to the corpse. Alright, let's get back to the point. Who killed this man? I don't know. And what's this guy's deal? Who is he? How would I know that? If I knew anything, I would have told you. You have no idea who he is? Why would I? Junpei sat back on his haunches and thought. We should check and see if he's got anything on him that might tell us who he is. Give me a hand here, Clover. What? We've got to flip him over. How else are we going to search his pockets? Clover didn't move. Junpei had no choice but to move the body on his own. He grabbed hold of an area not completely covered in blood and shoved. It took a moment, but eventually Junpei felt the man's bulk begin to shift. But just as it did, something fell from the man's left wrist. The bracelet with the Zero on the face. Yep, we know that. We know for sure that if you're dead, they can take your bracelet. Alright, come on, let me skip this. I've already read this kind of stuff before. Junpei stared at the bracelet. This man, he's dead, isn't he? Huh? No, it's just... I guess I really didn't think about it until right now. If his bracelet's off, that means he's dead. Well, it's pretty obvious that he's dead. You don't really need to look at his bracelet to figure out that he's dead. Yeah, I guess you're right. It is pretty obvious. He looks a lot better than the other bodies we've seen, though, you know? I mean, if there wasn't all this blood, he'd almost look like he was still alive. I mean, I know it's kind of a messed up thing to say, but he kind of has it better, you know? Dying from a bomb going off inside you. I mean, that's just... Some of Snake's bones went right through his skin. I think the explosion must have thrown him against the wall or something. There was a broken bone just sticking out of his left arm. Suddenly, Junpei realized what he was saying. How could he have been so cruel? He clapped his hand over his mouth. But it was already too late. He turned to look at Clover. She was glaring at him furiously. What did you just say? Her words sounded cold. He knew an apology would hardly atone for what he'd done, but he tried anyway. Oh man, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have said that. I really don't know what I was thinking. I mean, no, that's not what I'm talking about. What did you say about his arm? Arm? Yes, his left arm. You said it, didn't you? Well, yeah, I did, but... I mean, didn't you see it too? Of course not. I could barely look at him. Clover took a quick, deep breath. Are you sure it was his left arm? Junpei thought back. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. And he had a broken bone, right? What the hell are you getting at here? Just shut up and answer me. She shoved her face closer to his. He could see the fire in her eyes. Junpei winced and swallowed. Yeah, he did. It was pretty bad, too. The bone was sticking out of the arm. No sooner were the words out of his mouth than Clover's expression changed. Suddenly, she was crying. Junpei wasn't sure what to do. Thank you. It was close to the last thing he had expected to hear. Junpei had no idea what had just happened. He didn't think he'd done anything worthy of thanks, and he couldn't understand why she would have chosen that moment to begin crying. So he simply stood there, confused. "Thank you, Junpei." She thanked him again, and then something even stranger happened. Clover threw herself into Junpei's surprised arms. "Hey, what's going on with you?" "I'm sorry. It's just, I'm so happy." "Why?" "The body in the shower room. It isn't his. It isn't my brother." "Huh?" "It's not Snake." "Why on earth would you think that?" "Because his left arm is..." She stopped herself. "I'm sorry. I really shouldn't be talking about this." Junpei decided it would be prudent to not press her for any more information. If she did not wish to tell him, she certainly had no reason for doing so. Perhaps more importantly, however, if Clover was so certain, then she was likely right. That meant that the body in the shower room wasn't Snake. It wasn't much, but that knowledge lifted some of the weight from Junpei's heart. "He's still alive. I'm so happy." Tears shone in her eyes. Those tears melted Junpei's heart. And as she cried, she pushed herself up against his chest, like a child. Junpei put his arms around her and held her tight. "Junpei, you were right. No matter what happens, you can never lose hope. You have to remember what's most important, and to have faith and to love. If you can remember all of those, that'll bring you good luck." Clover reached into her pocket and pulled something out. It was a laminated bookmark of a four-leaf clover. I only made it here because you gave me this. I was suspicious of everybody, and I was angry and miserable. But because I had this four-leaf clover, because of what you said to me, Junpei hadn't thought his words would have had such an effect on her. Her words were making him feel a little awkward. "Thank you so much, Junpei." She looked up at him. He scratched his nose and pretended to notice something interesting somewhere else in the room. "If you really want to thank somebody, you should be thanking Santa." "Santa? Why?" "Well, he was the one who gave me that thing. And words for each leaf? I got that from him too." Then suddenly, Clover broke away from Junpei. "Huh?" He looked confused. He hadn't thought she'd react that poorly. Clover began to pace across the room. 6 steps to the left, 6 steps to the right, another 6 to the left, and then she stopped. Did Santa really tell you those things?" Her eyes were serious, but not angry. "Yeah, he did." "Did I, say something wrong?" "Oh, no, not at all. In fact, this could be really good news, I think." "You think?" "Santa knew about the words in the clover. The only people who should know about that are the other subjects." "Subjects?" "The other people who were in the experiment 9 years ago, with my brother and me." "But he's blind. And I was part of the Nevada test group. So neither of us would be able to recognize the faces of the people who were on this boat." Whoa. Time out. Junpei held up his hands. He took a deep breath and let it out. "Let's just calm down for a second, okay? Start from the top. Don't start with the end and then jump to the middle. You gotta start it at 1 and then move to 2 and 3 and 4 and so on. If you don't tell me stuff in the right order, I'm never gonna be able to figure it out." Clover nodded. "Alright, let's start with this experiment. What happened on this boat 9 years ago?" "Do you know about morphogenic fields?" He did, and the realization sent chills down Junpei's spine. "Whoa, oops, how about this? Theory of telepathic mechanism." Junpei recounted what Lotus had told him earlier. Clover nodded. Telepathy, huh? Well, that's not really it, but I suppose it's similar." "So they were testing telepathy on the ship?" "Yeah, I guess so." "So, what exactly did they have you guys do?" "The same thing that we're doing now." "Exactly the same thing." "What?" "The nonary game. 9 people were put on this boat and 9 others in the building in Nevada, and the game started." Junpei grabbed the sides of his head. "Look, I'm sorry, but I don't get it. What did the nonary game and some telepathy experiment have to do with each other?" Clover bit her lip. She blinked back, sudden tears. What had happened to her back in Nevada? The ability to access morphogenic field is affected by a couple of things. The first is epiphany, and the other is danger. You know, how sometimes when you're up against a really tough problem, and then the answer just kinda pops into your head? That's an epiphany. And what you learn from the epiphany can be transmitted with telepathy. When you add danger to that equation, then it gets easier to transmit that information over telepathy. So you're saying the nonary game was supposed to introduce that element of danger? Yeah, but it couldn't be just any old danger. It had to be life and death. And someone did actually die. A girl. Junpei felt the sudden grip of despair on his heart. Something deep and distant and powerful squeezed, and for a moment, he felt very empty and alone. She was on the boat with my brother. I was in Nevada, so I never met her, but I did hear her name. Her name was, The sound of the door opening was like a gunshot. Junpei spun around. Ace, you have the worst timing! Oh, my apologies. I seem to have disturbed you. Again. Ace. You two must have strong stomachs. I can't imagine how you can stay in this room for so long. Ace glanced down at the floor, at the corpse covered in blood. At any rate, Junpei, would you be so kind as to help me with something? I'm having a little trouble and I could really use your assistance. Come on, it'll only take a moment. God dang it, Ace! And with that, he turned and walked back toward the communications office. Clover waited until he was out of sight, then spoke in a small, quiet voice. I don't want Ace to hear us. We can talk about this later. Huh? Hey, wait! Clover ignored him. From outside, Junpei could hear Ace calling. Junpei, what are you doing in there? Hurry up. Ah! Grumbling to himself, Junpei stomped off toward the communications office. Of course. Okay, so we're going to actually end this episode here because I feel like this episode is actually going to be really long. I didn't realize there's going to be this much content to cover before we even got to the true ending part of it. So I'm going to leave this episode here. I was going to let you guys see what happened with the nonary game, but clearly Ace is a bigger troll than me, so you guys can be mad at him this time. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you enjoyed. I'll see you guys on the next MAMJ. Let's play. Junpei could see Ace's finger tighten. He could see it begin to squeeze down on the trigger. His body tensed, preparing for the catastrophic impact of hot lead against human flesh. Then, it happened. Snake stood up. What? No, that's impossible! For the first time, Ace's composure broke. With obvious effort, Snake lunged forward, one step closer to Ace, then another.